My job is the kind of job that no one wants, or even dreams of having. I kind of just fell into it after college when I was trying to be a doctor. You have one of those friends that day, hey, this job would suit you, and you hate that they're right, but do it anyway. I get a lot of alone time, kind of, with just one or two assistants. Nighttime, which I prefer anyway, cause the world is quiet and less dramatic, and it keeps me from avoiding people. Alive people, for that matter. I am a coroner, and the only one in the district, and it is a pretty big district. So you can imagine the workload I get of people going in and out as I go in and out of them when doing autopsies. Morbid joke, yes, but that's just me. When I tell people who ask, what's your job? I tell them I work with dead bodies. And it kills the conversation, which is just funny to me. Also, other questions like, ever seen anything scary happen? Any ghosts? And my face just drops. And it's an obvious no, 'cause I don't believe in that kind of thing. I try not to. The one story I never tell, 'cause I refuse to believe it myself, and I've only told a few people of this one incident, and they either get spooked or just don't believe me. And I don't joke that often. It was a July night, so you can guess how hot it can be, especially in the part of the world where I live. I had finally caught up on my work and hoped no other stuff would come through, but as life would have it, death would come rolling in. I get a buzz at the loading deck, and I go to inspect what had just arrived, and the usual crew had brought the body of a young woman, and they did it in such a hurry, which was weird, cause usually we would sit out the back and have a few cigarettes and talk trash for at least a half hour. But the two men I did this with kinda just slapped the body down and drove off. Strange. Thinking maybe they had another call and were in a hurry, so I didn't give myself a second thought of it. I called my assistant and told him to get the room ready, along with all the necessary tools we would be needing and such, as I started to push this young woman down the corridor after closing the loading door. As I was nearing the main room where I told my assistant to set up, I noticed the plastic which held the young woman had moved slightly, which made me wince. There were cases where the supposed deceased were mistakenly called dead on the scene, but this wasn't the case, so I chalked it up to a death rattle. Air is pushed out of the body by gas buildup after death, and sometimes causes the body to move. Again, I thought nothing of it and did as usual, preparing our newcomer to find the cause of death. As I was reading the report, Jane Doe found unresponsive and no visible cause of death was what caught my attention. This was common, and this was my job to find out what really happened. I set down the clipboard beside the said Jane Doe, and the damnedest thing happened just then. I stood there at the foot end of her as my assistant stood beside the head area of her, and seeing what I had seen. The body had begun to shake and moan within the plastic, which prompted me to quickly open the bag, thinking the person was alive. My assistant helped me unwrap her as quick as possible, and as we did, her head lifted up with the deadest eyes I had ever seen, sunken in and white as fog. I held the back of her head and placed my fingers on her neck, checking for a pulse as my assistant held her arms down to keep her from flailing. My heart began to throb in my throat as the body shaking got more violent, to the point where her feet began banging loudly on the stretcher. I stepped back and grabbed my assistant by the shoulder as we watched this deceased woman's body shaking like it was being electrocuted. The door swung open as another one of my assistants watched alongside us, as she took a cross from around her neck and began to pray in horror. Neither of us had seen anything like this, and we were sure as hell that this young woman was dead, as she felt cold as ice to the touch. And then I realized why the two men I knew so well dropped this body off in a hurry, which just made me guess she shook in the back of their transport and gave them the same horror we had. Me and my two assistants took a few minutes in the hallway trying to comprehend just what the hell was going on. And we had to do something, because this was just not natural. Or nature, for that matter. We quickly made a plan to run back in and strap down the body as quickly as we could. And that's exactly what we did. But as we did so, transferring her body from the stretcher to the slab, her muscle movements felt as if she really was alive, which just made the situation worse, because we were at a standstill with no idea what to do. As she was strapped down, she just wouldn't stop shaking while the three of us watched in horror. Nowhere in the medical book says the bodies of the deceased would move this much for so long. Slight muscle spasms, sure, but nothing this violently horrific. It was a long night of questions and answers that just wouldn't come. We had no options and no other opportunities we could take. I considered calling a colleague, but they wouldn't answer at that time of night, nor even believe what we were dealing with here. After a good 5 hours of us sitting in the hallway, either of us refusing to go back in there, as my one praying assistant still praying, I see her holding a small wooden cross, and it was right there. I had what was probably the best idea any of us could ever think of. I asked if I could borrow her cross, and willingly she hands it to me. I stood up as they watched me walk back into the room and approached the body. I looked over my shoulder and could see the assistants watching me through the small glass windows as their breaths steamed up their view. I came around the feet and slowly approached the head part of her shaking body, her head flailing up and down. shoulders arching inward as if she was trying to get free from the restraints. I take one last look at her twitching, sunken-in eyes, which give me chills as her jaw opened and shut, with her teeth chattering. I put the cross on my palm and placed it on her forehead, and just like that, her entire body froze, as in stopped shaking, but stood in place. I kept my composure as well as I could, as her body looked as if she started to deflate and relaxed back down on the slab. I looked over to the assistants and nudged them to come in, and I couldn't blame their caution of not wanting to come any closer from the door. I watched the body closely as I slowly started to lift my hand up, leaving the cross on her forehead, and I stepped back a few and finally felt a huge gust of relief fill my lungs. The assistants, I assume, felt the very same, but the one question that was on our minds, just what the hell were we dealing with here? 2 days went by, and I refused to work on that body. We all did so. We kept her at the far end of the freezer, with the cross, along with many others, surrounded her. I wrote on the report that she died of unknown causes, and it was the only thing I can do without having to work on that cursed body. I had her sent to some funeral home outside the city, far away from here, since no one had come forward to claim her remains. I had attached a note to the body, and whoever may be working on her next, do not remove the crosses. As a warning, I'm not really a praying type of person, but I really do pray they take that note seriously and listen to my warning, 'cause whatever that body is, it's not natural or nature.